Howdy, howdy, everyone. Chris here. On the last episode of Garage Noise, we went ahead and straightened the bent door edge on this Ford Mustang. I showed you how to bang it out into shape. We filled it, we blocked it, we primered it, and we got these two panels ready for paint. Today we're going to complete this project, and I'll give you all the information you need to know from masking to clear coat so you can achieve a finish like this. To get the best finish possible on your repair, you want to remove as much trim as you possibly can, like the door handles, the mirrors, the weather belts. Now, I know all that is time consuming, and I'll leave that up to you, but there is a chance that clear coat could peel later down the road if you don't remove those things. So we went ahead and sanded these two panels to prep them out for paint with 600 grit sandpaper. I used an orbital sander, but you can do it by hand. Remember, we're only painting the repair area, so we're only putting paint on that repair area. The rest of these panels are just getting clear. So that's the purpose of using 600, because when we use 600, we can clear over those scratches and they won't show through. Okay, we're going to start masking this off, and you want to start by masking off the jamb first. So we've done the bottom of the door, and now we're going to use this foam tape. This is a foam masking tape that has a sticky edge, and we're going to lay it on the edge of this door jamb and then shut the door on it. Now we went ahead and we've cleaned the jamb with some wax and grease remover. So you want to make sure it's nice and clean. We'll rip off a piece of this. I like to lay it a little bit back from the edge. You don't want it right on the edge. It allows that door to shut on it and allows some clear to go right over this edge. You don't want to stretch this. You just want to lay it in there. It's as simple as that, and this is going to give us a nice soft edge of clear coat. We'll pull this relatively soon after we paint it. Okay, so I'm also going to use this foam tape to put on the inner edge of this roof rail. This roof rail has a molding that sits right in here, but the glass lays up against that molding. So I want the glass to lay up against this foam tape. So I'm just going to put this in here to where the molding would lay, because we want to seal it from any overspray going inside the vehicle. And I've sanded this edge so we have good adhesion of the clear coat. Before I shut this door, I want to look over and make sure everything's masked off the way I want it. Now what we'll do here is we'll just lay some tape right onto that foam edge, our foam tape. And that'll seal it from any overspray going inside the vehicle. Laying a piece of tape in here, and then I'm pressing in on the back side so the sticky side is out. And this will seal. There we go. Now it's nice and sealed off. We want to fill these holes, cover these holes. And this is just not a big deal there. We just want to cover this up. Now we have the door jamb masked off. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on the trunk, mask that off. I did not remove the taillight on this vehicle because it has a large gap between the taillight and the body, and it's easily masked off. So when I'm taping off this edge of this door, I'll show you what I like to do. I like to rip a piece of tape off, and then what I'll do is I'll slide it in behind that door. So I'll just feed it through there, just like that, and then stick it down. Now this tape is resting right up against that door, eliminates overspray, keeps everything nice and tidy. When you're painting your vehicle, you want to make sure you mask off the wheel openings and the wheels. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Now on this particular model, I was able to back tape that quarter panel or that wheel opening. So what you want to do is clean the inside of that quarter panel really well with wax and grease remover. Make sure there's no oils or debris. And then you just I used a piece of 1.5 inch tape and put the sticky side out and taped against that edge. And then we can run plastic over and trim it out, and it'll be all nice and covered. One thing that might get overlooked is this gas lid door. You want to make sure you mask off inside a gas lid door. I'm using the foam tape here, laying it on that edge, and we'll shut that on there, and that'll give us a nice soft edge of clear. So the hard part's done. I can't stress enough how important your preparation is and your masking to get a quality pro-like finish. So don't overlook these things. These things are what take the most time, but they're also the most important. So now all we have to do is run plastic over this. This is an automotive treated plastic that allows the paint to stick to the plastic and not peel off and fly in your paint job. So now we're just trimming out the areas that we're painting. We laid the plastic over it. We'll trim those out with a razor blade. Be careful not to cut through your tape. And I always like to put a couple lines of tape around the perimeter so I have a little bit of extra material there so I don't accidentally cut through my tape into my paint. Let's talk about the first step of painting. We are going to use a wet bed, a color blender, or a clear base coat. Whatever you want to call it, that's what we're going to use to put down first on this vehicle. This is the product I use here. This is a Nason binder. And basically what it is, it's color with no pigment. So this is the stuff that binds that color together. You reduce it just like paint. So it's going to be 2 parts binder and 1 part reducer. We'll mix that, pre-mix that, get that ready to spray, and we'll pre-mix our color as well. So we'll have our binder or our clear base coat ready, and then we'll have our paint ready. You don't always have to use a clear base coat or a wet bed before you paint. This is a black metallic finish. It doesn't seem like you would want to use a clear base coat on this, but let me tell you why we are. This is a very coarse metallic in this color. And when you spray metallics, if you have any fine scratches when you're doing your blending of your color, so we're covering our primer and we're blending out into the rest of the vehicle, sometimes those metallics can lay funny in those scratches, and it creates what they call a modeling effect, which is an inconsistent look in your metallic finish. So what the clear base coat does is it kind of fills those minor scratches, so when you apply your paint, you have a nice even surface to lay a nice uniform metallic finish on. Any binder you can use as a clear base coat. I use Nason because I use Nason paint. You don't have to though. They made specific products for color blending, and I'll leave a link in the description to one of those. You could also pick something up at your local paint supplier. We have our clear base coat all mixed up in our gun. We're going to go ahead and tack rag it just before we spray our clear base coat. Now I am using the Iwata Kiwami 4. This is a really nice gun. It's a low budget gun right now. Everything's going up in prices. You can purchase this gun right at $200. In fact, the last time I saw it was under $200, and it's a really good value for the money. So if you haven't checked out the review and demo on this gun, check it out. I'll leave a link at the end. A couple other great budget guns that I've recommended in the past are like the Astro line of guns. Those are really good budget guns right at $100. But there's a couple other guns like the Segola 3300 GTO, really good gun, and I bought mine for around $215, and it's up at like near $400 now. So everything's going up. Even the 3M Performance gun has gone up. Now, let's talk about gun setup. I've got my fan pattern wide open. I've got my volume turned to 2.5 turns out from closed. I've got my air pressure at around 24 PSI for paint. That's typically what I do, between 20 and 24 for paint. And we're just going to spray it in a uniform way, 4 to 6 inches away. We're going to overlap 70% and spray at a consistent speed and a consistent distance from the panel. Now we have a good medium to wet coat of clear base coat on this, and I like to do my blend right away. So I've got that's why I have my paint already mixed up. So the purpose of this is for that metallics to lay in a wet bed, and that's what's going to give you a nice consistent finish in your metallics. The first coat of paint, we just want to cover that primer, so we got a good medium to wet coat of coverage on it. And I did notice that my plastic was flapping around down there, so I put a piece of masking paper over that to firm that up. This particular color covered very well, so I just put my second coat on, and I'm just going past where I put my first coat on, and then I'll blend it out into the quarter panel and the door, and then we'll be about ready for a clear coat. I love this Kiwami gun, and it sprays really well, but it does have one little drawback. It does not spray high metallic finishes the best. It's doable, but it atomizes those metallics. It atomizes paint so fine that it can leave it a little blotchy, so that's just one drawback to this gun I thought I'd mention. Let me know in the comments if you have this gun. Let me know how you think it sprays metallics. Now I'm just going to look over this paint job with the sunlight, make sure all my metallics look nice and consistent, make sure there's no corrections I need to do before we start clearing. And if you do a lot of paint work, one of these sunlights come in really handy. This one's really inexpensive. It's made by Astro, but it's really good. And if you're interested in any of the tools or products I use, I have a link to my storefront down in the description. So I am going to tack rag this off before we start spraying our clear coat. I don't always do this, but this again is a coarse metallic finish. So those metallics get everywhere. But if you are going to tack rag a coarse metallic paint, make sure you tack every inch of it or else you may miss some metallics. Now we're going to go ahead and mix up our clear coat, and the clear coat we're using today is the Denason 498 clear coat. It's a really good clear coat. I really do like this clear coat. You can pick it up at your local O'Reilly's. It's a 4-to-1 clear. Mixes up 4 parts clear coat, 1 part activator. Now we're going to start laying down some clear coat, and I'm working from the top down. Now it doesn't really matter where you start clearing as long as you're following that wet edge and keeping that wet at all times until you have your first coat of clear done. Let's talk about how I set up my gun for clear coat. I have my fan pattern set to wide open. I have my volume at 2.5 to 3 turns out from closed. And my air pressure on this Iwata gun, I like to run it at about 28 PSI, which I typically like to run my guns just a little bit lower air pressure, less overspray, and then I dial my volume back a little bit. So this is a good tip for you guys at home. If you're spraying in your home garage, you don't want a lot of overspray. You can dial your volume down a little bit so there's less material coming out of the gun, and that allows you to lower your air pressure so there's not as much overspray. Now, it is going to take a little bit longer to spray. You're going to have to paint a little bit slower and clear coat a little bit slower to get a flat finish, but it's going to eliminate some of that overspray. Some techniques to keep in mind when you're spraying your clear coat is you typically want to be 4 to 6 inches away from the panel. I tend to spray a little bit closer and move a little bit quicker, so it all depends on how fast you want to spray and how quick you're moving and your gun setup, really. But 4 to 6 inches is a good baseline. You want to overlap 70%. This allows you to get a good coat on it, and it allows it to flow and melt in and get a flatter finish. You want to spray your clear at a consistent speed, whether you're fast or slow. A lot of that's going to be determined by your gun setup. So if you have a lot of volume coming out, a lot of air pressure, you're going to be moving faster than you would if you had a lower volume and a lower air pressure. So we have our first coat of clear coat on this Mustang, and if it doesn't come out perfectly flat, don't be concerned because your second coat is really where you're going to dial it in and get that glass-like finish. So when I'm laying down the second coat of clear coat, I want to make sure this clear coat's flowing out nice and flat. So what I'll do is I'll go over a section and I'll kind of be watching it in the light to make sure it's flowing out like I want it to. And if it doesn't, I'll hit it a little bit harder. So when you're spraying your second coat of clear coat, keep an eye out how that clear coat's flowing out and how your finished product's going to look. If you see that you got a little bit too much orange peel, you might need to dial your volume down just a little bit to help that clear coat atomize a little bit better, lay a little flatter. If it's a little dry, then you need to turn up your volume. So you can make adjustments as you're spraying your clear coat. Just keep an eye on it. I hope you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful. If you are and want to help support the channel, all you have to do is like this video and leave me a comment down below. If you're needing tools or products for your project, I have a storefront link down in the description where I've organized and categorized all the tools and products I use to make them easy for you to find. Let's finish up this clear coat and take a look at the finished product. half an hour, I'm going to pull some of this tape that's taped right up against that clear coat, because if there's a bridge there where it dries fully, you could pull clear coat. So you want to pull that relatively soon after you paint. You want to wait about half an hour. You don't want it to be really fresh, but you don't want it to be fully dry either. Overall, this job came out beautifully, nice and clean and flat. There was a few little particles of dust that we had to cut and buff. But if you want to learn more about paint and body repair, consider subscribing to the channel and check out one of these videos now. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.